My name's Kerstin, and I'm an Arctic nature guide working for Lindblad. We are here at Norwegian in Hornsund, and there's a beautiful Trappist hut we're going to have a look at. In the 19th and 20th century, the Norwegians were here as trappers. Usually it was single Norwegian man who would spend the whole winter, 11 months here. You might wonder, why wouldn't they be here just for summertime? It's much more convenient and warm. But they were hunting foxes and bears for the fur, and the fur was thickest and most valuable wintertime, so they wanted to kill them in wintertime. Every trapper usually had a main hut where they would live, but in order to extend the territory, they also would have 1 to 3 satellite huts, and the satellite huts would be quite small. The smaller, the easier to eat. And so they would live in the main hut, but then every week they would go to one of the satellite stations and hunt from there and then return back to the main hut where the provisions were. This is quite a big satellite station, but this hut is famous for one particular trapper, and her name was Wanny Woldstad. And she's considered the first female trapper on Svalbard. Wanny was quite a special woman. She loved being out in nature, she loved to hunt. She won trophies for her marksmanship. In the 1920s, she lived in Tromsø, which was the hub to the Arctic. She was already twice widowed in the 1920s. And so she had to provide for the family. She bought a taxi, and she became the first female taxi driver in northern Norway. She had trappers on board regularly that told her about the adventures, the good and the bad times they had up here on Svalbard. She was totally fascinated by it. And one of them said, "Why don't you come with me?" And she jumped on that offer. So in 1932, they came up to Hyttevika, which is the main hut around the corner. And this was one of their satellite stations. In 1932, when she started, her sons were 17 and 18 years old. So they already had jobs. So she left them in Norway and went up with Anders here, but the year after, she took both sons as well. And that is why this hut is quite unusual in the regard that you see several bunk beds in there. Usually there will only be one bunk bed. And so she was up here for 5 years, and she shot polar bears, she skinned Arctic foxes, she got her hands dirty. They even killed belugas out here. In the Second World War, they evacuated the whole of Svalbard. No one was allowed to be here anymore. And so in 1938, they didn't come back. And she wrote a book, and that book has been translated. It's called Wanny Get Your Gun. And she toured through Norway giving talks. So in Norway, she still is a well-known name, particularly in Tromsø. She died far too early when she was 66 years old in a small traffic accident. Like, to read something in a book is one thing, but here you can actually see the hut. You can go in there, you can walk in the footsteps of Wanny, and you can imagine, or try to imagine how it was. 4 months of darkness, no sun shining, and then you are a 5-foot woman in the 1930s. Trapping job, killing polar bears, being a woman in a man's world. It's just amazing, and you can see it, you get a much better feel for it.